Cecilia is originally from Brazil and migrated to Canada in 2014. She was 34 years old. Being a researcher back in France, where she did her Ph.D., she arrived to Montreal with her husband to start a whole new life. In this interview, Cecilia shares that the immigration journey can be hard at times, but it's definitely worthy of fighting for. Enjoy.
So, hi, Cecilia. Thank you very much for being here with us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And in this particular subject, where I believe you have a lot of experience moving from one country to another because you didn't decide to migrate just once, but twice, and to two different countries, continents as well. So why don't you tell us about where you come from and why you decided to move to another country and all this process?
Yeah. Hi. Well, thanks for asking me to be part of it. It's a pleasure to talk about a bit of my journey. So I'm Brazilian, and in Brazil, I graduated in biomedicine, and I decided to go through a scientific route instead of working in a hospital because there are multiple places where I can work with, and did a master's. And then I had the opportunity to collaborate with a group in France, and they offered me a scholarship, and that's how I decided to leave my country. It was at first just to do a PhD,
Mm.
just to get a sense to learn more things and have experience in another place, and maybe put a CV in a place that I could go back home and get a good job. But things changed in my country economically, so it's very hard now to be a scientist there. And also, I changed as a person. I convinced my boyfriend to join me. We got married, and then I decided to pursue science and to do a postdoc. And then from France, I got this opportunity to move here to Canada to do my postdoc here, and we decided to stay. So that's how it started.
So you did all that studying, being a student.
Yeah, I was a student when I left my country. I was a PhD student, and it was my first experience living abroad, paying my bills, and and also being a foreigner because I always lived with my parents in my own country, speaking Portuguese, which is something it's what I've been doing my entire life. So it was the first time that I had to speak another language. So speaking French most of the time, also learning because it's different when you learn in a course than when you are out there speaking to natives. So the first 2 months where I was a bit, this is not exactly how I learned in the class, so I still had to adapt. But I was in an institute doing a PhD, then there was a lot of foreigners, so people were patient and accepting and just being like, oh yeah, and helping me with all the languages were not a problem, basically because in the lab we were speaking English most of the time. So that I got to learn French because I wanted to, because it was easier to deal with renting apartments, going to supermarket, or just talking to people in the bank or something. And then I wanted to continue to learn French, but I met a lot of people that it was harder for them, and not that they didn't want it to, but depending on which language you already speak, the second one could be similar or not. So French and Portuguese are quite similar, so I didn't felt like it was something that I couldn't do. So I just decided, and it did help me a lot when I decided to come to Montreal, because then I was speaking English, but I also had the French. So then I guess this was one of the good things that I already had, that I didn't have to arrive here and learn both. But I mean, it's not my first language, so I do little mistakes, but I could just, it wasn't this first thing that I had to check on my list, like learn the language. So I already had this done, and it helped me to integrate. That's, yeah, what I think.
And I believe you have to like languages, right? Because not all the time it's as easy for everybody. So I believe that you chose to learn French because you really liked the language. Or how, like, was it always easy for you to learn other languages or?
Yeah, I guess so. So I studied in, so more like back in time, I studied in a French school, in fact, just because I don't know, my mom picked a school that they had like a French philosophy way of doing things. And we had like very little French courses. So we learned how to count, little songs. So I already had the melody and some of the words in my head. So there was not like complete strange thing to do. And then I decided just to take a French course because I already did English. And then I decided to go for another language. And my mom was like, why don't you try French? I already know little things from school. And then coincidentally, I got this collaboration in the French lab. So it wasn't that I was like pursuing French. This was a coincidence. And well, luckily in the French course, I met my boyfriend, and now we are married. So that was a good thing that came with.
Yes, of course.
And he also speaks French. But yeah, but I do like it. So I like languages, and I don't feel like it's very complicated for me. So this helped because I had this already happening, and I didn't have to make time or money for this. This was something that I was already doing. I was doing languages and things, and then when the opportunity came to move to France, I was like, oh, okay, I know a bit of French, so that's gonna help me. So that, yeah, it was in good time. I know that is not what happens most of the times when people decide to move to another place, but yeah, it didn't help a lot.
It's super interesting because it seems that while you were living in France, you were living like kind of vacation student kind of experience where anything is for real. Everything is for real, but not at the same time because you know that sometime you're going to go back to your country and that's going to be it. And you're going to continue practicing your career, for example.
Yeah.
And then you moved here to Canada and then things started to change. And now you're permanent resident
Yeah.
or Canadian citizen. And now you live the real life. Do you feel there's kind of like a difference between that girl who was in France and the woman who is in Canada?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was a PhD student at society, it was like, for me, it was a temporary status. My feeling was like, I came here to study. I don't have to think about a lot of things. It's my 4 years, and then I'm gonna come back home. I'll have my parents. I don't have to be so worried about things. But in fact, when I was there, then my boyfriend went, and then we got married and stayed. We were thinking where are we gonna go next, because it was clear to us that we are not gonna stay there.
Yeah.
Then from that moment we had to be thinking and planning where are you gonna go. So luckily we got married a year before we moved, and then well, in Brazil is a big thing when you get married, when you invite a lot of people give you gifts. So when normally they give you things for the house, and we're like, we want to move, so don't give us things for the house. If you want to do something, give us money. So then we did. It was not a lot, but it didn't help for little things. So from this year before, when we were thinking about where to go, and for personal reasons, my husband didn't want to go back to Brazil, and he was like, I don't want to go back there. Things, I mean, getting a job is not so easy. And he had lived in Canada for a little bit before because his cousins were here, so he visited a couple of times and he liked it a lot. And he was like, I feel like it's a place that is accepting more immigrants, and I do want to try to living there. I like Montreal. He was in Montreal before. I like Montreal. Can you try to see if you can get a job in Montreal? And then I looked around, and there was a lab that I was really interested in. They were doing something that was in line with things I learned in my PhD. And I get in contact, and they offered me a position. But then over this year, we were able to save money, not a lot of money, but just like a start. And then that to me was really hard because I was never like saving money to live, to things that gonna happen in my life. I was always living with my parents. They were the ones saving money. I was just spending money. So that first adjustment was quite different to me. And then when we came here, well, I'm already 36 years old. So then we are married, and then we were thinking, are we gonna have kids or not? When is it gonna be a good time? And when you are in academia, it's very hard to figure out a good time. I had a very nice PhD, and my supervisor wanted me to stay. But my husband was like, it was hard for him to get a job there, so he was, no, we have to go. And I also wanted him to work and to get to work with things that he liked, because he loved his job. So then we were thinking, where can we go that I can find jobs in academia? He can get a job. He's an architect. And we were thinking where, also because of the language, if you're going to move, you have to think, because I was thinking, should I go to Germany because they have good labs? But then he was like, well, I don't really want to learn German. I don't know anything. And it's going to be so different, because it's so different. If it would be like Spain or so. So then we were all thinking and making a list, where can we go that is not going to be so complicated? He came up with Canada. He was like, I've been there, I like it a lot. I know that they're very diverse. There's a lot of immigrants, so everybody has an accent, so we are gonna have our accent as well. It's not gonna be a problem. And then I started looking, I found the lab that I liked, and they offered me a position, and that's how we came here. But the difference in our mentality, or I don't know, we were like getting a bit more mature, is that now we were like, okay, it might be a place that we might stay or not. And I'm 36, so when I got here, I was 33, and I was like, well, if we want to have kids, we better think about it, because nature might not help us for very long. Yeah. And then we're thinking, okay, if I have a job and it's stable, he has a job and stable in Canada with the work permit that we had the public health insurance and everything, so everything was covered. And then we had our son, so now it's completely different. We were thinking more, although we don't plan for 10 years ahead, but we do plan 5 or 3. What we want to do, should we save money for this, so we even bought a house, so we live in our house now, but before we were renting, and we had it all planned, like how much we spend for rent. What about if we look for a house that we're gonna spend the same thing but for a mortgage? So yeah. It's not gonna change with the bills that we have already, but it's something that we build for us. And even in the future, if things get better in Brazil and we decide to go back home, we just sell the house and we go. So all of that mentality, I had to create. My husband already had a little of this, because he likes to be in charge of money and saving, and I'm more like, I want to buy this and get that.
But you have this mentality, otherwise you would have been lost.
But then we had to adapt over time, and it do change from the first country that I was as a student, and now as a permanent resident and working. A lot of things change, and also I'm also a mom, and I'm working in the lab, so it's definitely had like a lot of change in our lives. But I feel like it wasn't so drastic at once. It was like everything we had to decide, and then we talked, and the good thing is that we talked a lot, and then we take the decision as a team, and then we go. So this was, immigrating, I mean, coming here was also easy because he came with me. And then when I was in France, it was very hard at first because he wasn't there. So I moved there to do my PhD, and I was alone, and I was living in a very small studio alone. And the first months were not so easy, although I was happy to do my PhD there, but then luckily he went. But then I see the difference when we came here than he was with me, and even we were still renting things, putting the house together. There was exact same things that you do when you just arrived in a new country, but we had planned much more, and I wasn't alone, so there was like a huge difference.
Yeah, most of the time people who migrate alone, I migrate alone myself, and it changes completely. It's something in the mindset. I don't know, maybe for example, for you it was always the same thing of studying, going to university, coming back, resting a little bit, because I believe that spending all day long in the lab must be exhausting. But at the end, like repeatedly all the time, without your network, your family, your friends, not having news, the time changed, because France says how many hours are different.
Yeah, it could get 5 or 6 depending on
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not even when you want to talk to your friends, maybe they are asleep or vice versa.
Yeah.
So going back to looking for a job, because when you decided to move from France to Canada, you have to look for a job. And how did you do it?
Yeah, so because I was doing a PhD and I was looking for a postdoc, it's the process in this job setting is a bit different. You could go and check on the labs and see if they are openings and you send your email and things, but I did try to do that and I got zero response.
Yeah.
So then I talked to my supervisor because he is known in the field, and I'm like, I'm trying to contact this lab in Montreal, but they're not answering me. Which happens sometimes because supervisors, so in Canada, most of the supervisors in labs, they are professors. So they get tons of emails from students. This in Europe is not a reality. There's a lot of people that, of PIs, the principal investigators, and they're in the lab that they don't teach. So they are just in the lab. Here, this basically doesn't exist. So then, yeah, he didn't answer me, and I went to my supervisor and I said, "Can you contact him, or what should I do? Should I just give up? The guy doesn't answer me." And he was like, "I'm gonna call him." And then he called. He was like, "My student wants a job in your lab, and she's really good. I think you should look at her CV and interview her."
Wow.
So then, because of this, he looked into my CV. I did, I think, 3 rounds of interview. I did a Skype interview. And then I went to a conference and he was there with his group and I did an interview there. And then he invited me to come here and I did another interview in the department. So of course he hired me because he liked, but I feel like you do need your network because otherwise he would never answer my email. I emailed him, I think, 5 times. And it happened a lot, even with other people. When I was there, I would get emails from students that wanted to do internship or wanted to join the lab, like, "Hey, I saw your name on the website. I'm interested." So this, it wasn't super hard after he answered me, although it took some time. So I think I contacted him in July and I got a final answer by December.
Wow. Well, at the same time, it wasn't that long, because most of the people, when they arrive to their new country, they spend between 8 to 1 year looking for the ideal job, and you were able to contact your network and make your teacher
So
talk to the other one and force things to happen. So what I wanted to ask you something, but just now, for example, just thinking about that, do you believe it's because of the niche that you're working at that you need to pass through all these steps and people to get your job, or
Yeah, so in academia, the people do check. So you need recommendation letters. And this happens all the time because people don't get to, if they don't know you, even when they know you, they need to check your background in the labs that they work in the past. So it's very important to keep a good relationship where you work with. Even if you don't get too much along, just remember in the future, they're gonna contact your supervisor. So this is something that I also had to learn over time. When you were a student and you have some differences with supervisors and you're just like, "Oh, I don't like this or that." So it's a professional setting, and of course you might not get along with everybody, but you have to take the best of the opportunity. So you have just to think, okay, what am I going to do here in this lab or wherever you are? I'm going to learn this and I'm going to do my best. And then if it's not a place where I'm super happy with, you just look for something else and they're going to contact this place. So this is always happened. So now I'm in another lab. I'm not in the same lab that I came. And it was a lab that I did have some, sorry, my life. It was a lab that I had done some training with. So I was working with them for 6 months. And after when my contract finished, I was like, oh, I want to work in this place where I did this training because I did like the work they're doing there. And even so, they knew me. They were like, okay, we are gonna talk to your supervisor to let him tell us if he's happy with your work or not. So this is very important, first to keep your network, also to be in good terms with people, even with the differences. You know, people are different everywhere, doesn't matter. And because they're gonna check on you, and you want your qualities to be what people are gonna talk about.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you're hypocritical, because you are not. You're just maintaining very professional and keeping all the people around yourself being a good piece of recommendation for your future experiences, not only for the job, but to, I don't know, buy a house or getting a credit or renting a new another apartment, sorry. So you always need a network or people who is going to say good things about you.
Yeah, it's with everything. Even if you need references and then you don't remember, like you think, oh, I don't have anybody, and then you could think, oh, by the way, there was this tutor, there was this professor, they helped me with assignment. There was so many things that you could think about that could relate and say something about your work, even if it's not just for a job, but it's, I don't know, apply for med school or things like this. Is a big thing here. A lot of foreigners come here to do a university, and they apply to med school, and they need, I think, 3 or 4 more letters or recommendations. So this is just to keep this in mind, that you want people to get to know you and to know what you do.
Yeah, of course. So going back to your personal life, was there any moment that you felt like, oh my God, no, I'm going back to Brazil. There's no point in this.
Yeah, there were some moments that I was thinking this. So I do miss my family a lot. My family is big. I have 2 brothers. I have a lot of cousins, and we're like together and very close. So then birthdays, I miss them. Holidays, I miss them. And also when things are not going well at work, I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I missing everything that, you know, just being with my family? And now I have a son. So he's not able to grow up with a family because I chose to be here, because my work is good. But then when things are not good, I do think sometimes, what am I doing here? But I still like being here. But it's true that when you come alone, even if I have my husband with me, but it's just the 2 of us, everybody else is there. And this moment is difficult. Like when I have my son, it was difficult because I think I was just too emotional when I was pregnant. But luckily my mom came. But sometimes it's not a reality, you know, flight tickets are expensive, so depending on where your family is from and how long they want to stay, you don't have that. But luckily my mom came. But it was a bit hard. Also, when you get sick. So when I was sick and my husband has to go to work, and then you have to stay at home alone, or when my son is sick and I have to miss work, or my husband has to miss work. So not having this family support is difficult. This sometimes is a bit difficult. Yeah. But I would say things related to family are the most that sometimes make me wonder, and second think like, oh, what should I do? So I always say I'm happy here now, and I'm here for now, but my entire family is in Brazil. So from time to time we might think about, oh, we want either to bring them here, my parents, or maybe have some time to go there.
Yeah, that separation is difficult. We cannot have everything in the same place.
Yeah.
Do you already have a formula to overcome that situation of missing your family and friends and environment?
Yeah, well, luckily my husband is also Brazilian, so part of it we can speak Portuguese most of the time at home. In the end, we cook a lot of Brazilian food. But in Montreal, I think there's so many foreigners, and people are so organized in a sense. I didn't see a lot of this when I was living in Paris, but here I have a lot of Brazilian friends. I do have a lot of Canadians and French and Mexican, Colombians. I have a lot of friends, but I do have a lot of Brazilians. And when we are feeling homesick, we just invite everybody to come, and we cook together, we do a barbecue, or we go somewhere and we play some music, and we just being together and speaking our language and talking about things that we share in common already help us. So I do have a close group of friends that they are kind of my family here, and we spend Christmas together if I don't go to Brazil, or my birthdays, or Mother's Day, or Father's Day, because Father's Day is different in Brazil. And there was a lot of other things that we do in Brazil. So I feel like having friends, already having family, if you can. My family is very small, so having friends helps you to like get rid of this sense of, oh, I want something I don't have. So when my friends are around, we are very happy making our barbecues and talking about our country and things we like. So it really eases it out, and I feel like it helps a lot.
The second family, right?
Yeah, and also in Montreal, there's so many good restaurants, every type of food you can imagine.
Yeah, there are.
So it's like you want to go to, I don't know, I want absolutely to eat this cake. My grandma makes this cake, and then I go to this Brazilian bakery. There's a Brazilian bakery, so I go to the Brazilian bakery. It's the same cake, so it just tastes like my childhood. So it also helps me a lot. Sometimes I go to places that they sell little things that, especially food, I think, I don't know, but I remember a lot Brazil from music and from food. So I go to these places and they speak Portuguese there, and there's the music, and yeah, it does help. So I feel like Montreal is very welcoming for people from a lot of places, because you can find these little shops and restaurants around, and can help you to blend in and see, okay, I'm good in
This Brazilian culture is super powerful, so that's why I believe it's kind of invaded other countries and integrated in other cultures as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know. Well, I will have to find someone from, I don't know, Tanzania or something somewhere super far. I don't know if they can actually eat their food here if they move
Yeah.
to Canada. So, but Brazilian culture is super powerful. Just to end our interview, because I've been enjoying it a lot. I believe we're going to do a second part, because I want you to tell me about how was motherhood, how is it in couple, for example, because it should be complicated sometimes to be in a couple and decide, and who was the first one who said, let's go there, and I told you, or things like that.
Especially when things don't go well.
Yeah, exactly. But just to end, if you were able to look back at the girl who moved to France to study, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to do not stress so much, that being organized pays off, and just to be patient. Be patient and resilient. Just like things are gonna work, you do what you have to do. Things are gonna work. Don't freak out. This is real.
Is there something else that you would like to tell to the 33-year-old lady who moved to Canada?
Oh yeah, that I think things are going well. That she's happy, and that yeah, that things are okay. She made a good choice. There was a good choice. There was a good decision to come. Yeah.
What will you tell to yourself just right now?
Right now, I would say that I'm doing okay, that things are going okay, that I am in the right path. I think that I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do, and that yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for your time. This conversation has been awesome. We had a couple of difficulties with the sound, but nothing that cannot be fixed. So really, thank you so much. I believe people is going to enjoy it. And till the next time.
Thank you.